So the intent for today is just prepping your documents for use in the field. Now, some things that I'm not going to get into is not talking about adding markups, the measuring, not doing any of that. This is all just solely about prepping the PDF. So once you get sent the PDF, what can you do with it to make it easier for those that have to interact with it to be able to interact with it? Quick agenda. I'm going to go through just a quick couple minutes about myself, about who is US CAD, what is the overall objectives for today, just diving into it, showing it live. I don't do any recordings and videos and stuff to play it back for these. Everyone I've done has always just been me live clicking away right in front of you. We have some time, go through the actual Q&A at the end of it. Then a quick just next steps if you got questions and what else might be upcoming for webinars that you may be interested in. So a quick bit on me. Again, my name is Ken Phelps with US CAD. I've been doing presentations like this and instructions along these lines for well over 20 years now. Been around the horn for quite a while. Certified Bluebeam instructor and consultant. Who is US CAD? So we're one of the leading technology consulting firms in the US. Been around for over 20 years as well. A lot of what we get into as a company is more than just selling software. We're one of the largest Autodesk resellers. We are the largest Bluebeam reseller, but also getting into just training and education and all the various products, BIM consulting to help with projects, scanning process to go through. You have certain facilities you need to have scanned. We have the team and staff that can help support that, even the equipment as well, and even production too. So if you need help with going through and a big project comes in that you won, fantastic, but you don't have the actual manpower to go through and deal with it currently, we can be that support staff until you do kind of staff up to have your own team to do that for you as well. Various products. Like I mentioned, we are one of the top Autodesk resellers in the country. We are the top Bluebeam reseller, but into Leica Geosystems, M Suite, Point Views, CAD learning processes go through. You can see there's a whole host of things that we can kind of bring to the forefront for you. If you got more questions on it, feel free to reach out to us. We're pretty much coast to coast at this point. We have people that are located California, Arizona, Georgia, Minnesota. I mean, we got folks in Wisconsin and Michigan and Florida, Texas as well. We got kind of all over the map. Definitely got resources to help assist in whatever you may need. So for today, kind of our objective I want to go through is 3 main points to go through. There'll be a lot of little details in between for all this, but first one being just getting the PDF that contains the right content that you need. Whether it's trying to pull sheets together, trying to strip out content you don't have to interact with, how do you pare that data set down to the right content? And then secondly, going through and making it easier to navigate through that PDF. First part of that is labeling the sheets. So ways that you can do that, either manually typing content in, you can go through a team called auto marking as well. Bookmarking is part of that process as well, how you can label those sheets. And then the last piece here is a hyperlink. We can go through a couple ways. That probably could be its own hour-long webinar by itself of just hyperlinks, but there's a couple main things I'll focus on for us today is just adding a hyperlink manually in that process, and then a batch routine to go through to really add in some hyperlinks much more efficiently throughout the entire PDF. So that's it for my PowerPoint preamble. I'm going to just dive right into the software. So let me hop over to my Bluebeam. So one of the first things I want to look at is just making the PDF contain what you want to have it contain. So one of the first steps is if you have multiple PDFs that have been created and sent to you, that maybe you don't want to interact with multiple PDFs, you want to simply have a single PDF of multiple pages. How can we combine those PDFs together into one? So if you want to do it within Bluebeam Review, you can also do it outside of Bluebeam Review, and we'll go through both of those. So my just first example I got here, I've got 3 PDFs open on my screen. You can just go to your File menu, maybe third of the way down, you'll find Combine. So this gives you the option to combine PDFs from directly inside of Bluebeam Review. So the first portion of this, the top half of that dialog box, gets into which files do you want to combine. So you can just simply choose the add button, go browse out to where those PDFs reside, select them, open them up into this list. Or if you happen to have them open like I do, like I want to put these 3 PDFs I have here into one PDF. Just click on the add open files. That'll take all those files that you have open and load them into just that list so you can bring them into one PDF. And you can still reorganize this. So in my case, my numbering sequence is kind of out of order. I got my 111 is before my 110. You can always just select any one of the files in this list and then choose the arrows on the left to move that file up or down so it has the right order that you want to see in the finished combined PDF. If you don't happen to have them open again, you can just choose add, browse out to where that file resides, select it to open it up and have it in this list. So when you do this, it's not going to prompt you for a file name and location at this point. The default naming scheme is just simply document 1. If I do it again, it becomes document 2. It's an unnamed, basically unlocated PDF until I go to save the file. So if I were to just try to simply close the file out by clicking on the X, or if I choose my little floppy disk icon here for the save, it's going to prompt you for a name and location at this point. Now, the other means of trying to bring the files together can be done outside of Bluebeam Review entirely. You don't even have to have Bluebeam Review open. So just within Windows Explorer, you can go find the files. Let me grab my Windows Explorer here. So just within Windows, you go grab some PDFs. These are all individual sheets. So I can go and select on whatever handful I want to have here. So I'll just grab a few of these. I can right mouse click on these documents now and have the option of combine files in review. Now what you may notice here is that the labeling here is a little bit misleading because it doesn't actually do it within review. It uses what's called the stapler. That's this little stapler icon. So this opens up another program. This is also the reason why you don't have to be in Bluebeam Review to do this, because it's not using Bluebeam Review. It's using the Bluebeam stapler program to do this outside of Bluebeam Review. It's the same basic dialog box. The main difference with the stapler process to look at is it does ask you then for a name and location. Because it's being done outside of Bluebeam Review, it doesn't have to have those 2 fields of info for it to make the PDF for you. Same idea. So if you want to have the order reorganized, you want to move a file up or down the list, you can just select the file name, grab the arrows here to move it up or down. The red X would remove the file out of that list. So you can pick and choose what you want to have. So for the file name, I'll just be lazy and call mine 123. And then where is that file going to go? So where do you want to save that new combined PDF to? Mine's just defaulting to my desktop. You can choose whatever makes the most sense for you. The common one here is the source folder. So if you're going to pull in 10 files from job ABC folder where those individual files reside, you may want to put the combined one right back in that same location. You can just choose the option of use the source file folder. Now to actually make the file, there's a couple ways to go about doing that. There is the create file button down here in the lower left. What I would recommend that you do is you choose the content you want, you name it, give it a location, click create file. It makes the new PDF and it should open that up within Bluebeam Review for you automatically. A common step that people go through is just habit for me as well, typically is you choose the files, you name it, you locate it, and you click OK. Pretty standard kind of interaction you have with the environment. That doesn't make the file by clicking OK. It takes you to the next dialog box in the stapler process. This is your job processor. It's another opportunity that you have to add more files if you happen to miss. You can click on the add files. But to combine this together, to actually produce this 1, 2, 3 PDF, you want to click on Staple. This will combine those files together. It'll staple those files together to make one PDF out of it. So now I have my new file, my new 1, 2, 3 PDF, which contains whatever sheets I chose to load inside here. So I've got a handful of pages being done. So either way to combine that content together works just fine. It depends on what you have and what is the best approach that you want to take moving forward. Now the opposite direction of this is you have a multi-page PDF. I want to go through and then strip it down so then I have just individual sheets, or you just pare it down to contain just the right data set for a certain discipline that makes the most sense for you. So you want to have all the plumbing together and all the structural together, whatever you want to have, you want to break it down by a certain data set. One of the ways to use that is just, I got a single PDF here of 40 some odd pages that make it up. You can then choose to strip the content out that you don't need. So it's up to you as to what approach you take for that. You might take the original file and just start deleting the pages out that don't pertain to what you have to interact with. So maybe I'm just deal with the architectural content, the information here around the civil sheets I don't need. You can just simply right click on those and choose to delete the pages out. So I can choose my delete pages. It'll default to what I have selected here. However, if you do know that you want to delete out pages, in my case, 2, 3, 4, and 5, for example, I can change this to a custom range. And so I will want pages 2 through 5 to be deleted. So it's not just a one-off, one by one to delete the pages out that you don't want to have. You can just bulk remove those pages out of here. Also, just select the sheet, and if you hit delete on the keyboard, it's an option to go through and remove the pages out of here too. It's not a common approach. I much prefer the dialog boxes to go through. Also, if you're trying to then pull pages from different PDFs, so I don't want to have maybe all the pages out of this, but I want maybe a sheet or two out of here and a sheet or two out of a different PDF combined together. Not their entire list of pages. I want just a handful. You can copy and paste. So just say, for example, I want to just make a very generic, brand new PDF, 8.5 by 11, nothing fancy. You see there's nothing going on, but I want in this one, my page 2 here, I need that also in my new PDF I just made. So I can just copy it out of here, go to my thumbnails, and then paste the pages in. And I have that same sheet from the other PDF in this one. So you can copy and paste. Now, one of the questions that does come up fairly often is, can I drag and drop? Yes and no. So you can drag and drop if you happen to have multiple sessions of Bluebeam review running. So one session has, say, my current PDF I have right now open. A different session has a different PDF in it. I could take this thumbnail and drag it from this PDF over to the other session and drop it into that one. Otherwise, if I have multiple PDFs in the same running session of Bluebeam Review, copy and paste is the best method for doing that. Yeah, see a bunch of questions coming in here in the questions panel. That's fantastic. I'll try to get to those at the end of the presentation. So by all means, keep on typing in your questions. That's awesome to see and have inside of them. So once you've kind of pared down the PDF, it contains the right sheets that you want to have. How do you label these? So right now, mine's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 being used for my sheet numbers inside of here. Not terribly useful. If it's a small set of PDF pages, you only got a 3-page PDF. Pages 1, 2, 3 might be just fine for you. If you got 100 sheets or 1,000 sheets, that's not going to be a fantastic thing to view. You want to have these labeled appropriately with the right content for each one of those pages inside of here. Now you can just double click on where it says number 1. See a little field will pop up here kind of in the middle of the sheet, and you can type in whatever new info that you want to have for that page label. So I just typed in my generic new info. Another concern that you may have when doing this, even within like the copying and pasting or moving sheets around from various PDFs to each other, you may end up with multiple sheet 5s because you're copying and pasting from various ones into one main PDF. You might have redundant numbers inside of that list. Where you may want to start is just simply reset everything. You can just right click on it and say reset all the page labels. It'll just resequence everything from 1 through however many number of pages that you have. So if you had 3 copies of page 5, you'd have 4, 5, and 6. It wouldn't be all the same numbers. Now doing that manually for all the pages, in 3 sheets, not terrible. You got 503 sheets. That's your day typing in all the page labels. That's far too much like work. We can take the data directly from the PDF. Now, one main caveat to this approach is that the PDF has to contain text. If it's been scanned, this is not going to work because a scanned document doesn't contain text. There's nothing to extract in this routine. But at the top of the thumbnails, there's an option here for create page labels. And we have 2 means of doing this, 2 options for making these page labels. If you have bookmarks done, you can leverage that data for the labeling, or we can pull it from a region of the PDF. In my current example here is I don't have any bookmarks created yet, so my only real option I have is to pull it from a region of the PDF. So when I select that, you want to choose the area around which you're trying to extract the data from, and where you select here matters. You make sure you want to choose a big enough space so if you have more characters being used in that page number, it's wide enough to incorporate any variation to that content length or placement. So if it goes up or down a little bit on various pages, you want to have any kind of shifting to that accounted for in the region that you select. Now, this is going to be the preview down here is going to pull that data and tell you what it sees. Now, if for some reason that preview is blank, or maybe it shows some just random gibberish inside of there, it's more than likely because it's not a font. There's no actual texted data being used there. Now, one of the quick ways before I get too far in this to look at that, just to see what you have for content, is use the highlighter. So if you grab the highlight tool, as you get near text, watch the cursor change. It sees that my G0.01 as a text string. So it goes to the little vertical bar, this pipe symbol, to highlight as if it was like a word sentence. It'll just highlight that in a straight line. If what you see is just this cursor as it gets near it and the icon never changes, that's not text. So this process, trying to create those, isn't going to give you any meaningful output to it because there's nothing there to extract. So I'll grab my region here, and you can do multiple regions as well. You can choose the add down here if I wanted to have the sheet number and sheet title both. Just before you choose the add for a secondary region, I would highly recommend you have some kind of a differentiator, some kind of a space between these regions. It's just habit for me is I'll do a space, little dash, the hyphen there, and a second space, and then I'll choose add for the secondary area I'm trying to pull. So I want to go through and grab then the title. Now, in my case here, I know that just because I've done this a million times, that on my next pages, I've got multiple lines of text. So I want to make sure I'm tall enough to incorporate the other content on the next sheets so I have the right labeling that I want to see. Again, where this shows up though, where you define for that box really matters. You can see here I've got my preview, my G001 cover page. Looks great. Now, also where this comes into play then for that region of where you select to pull this content from is your page sizes. If every page is the same size, the one region here might work fantastic for you. If the content you're trying to extract is on different locations, because maybe it's being provided from different sources. You know, the structural team has their own title block, or it's being provided from an outside vendor that's going to supply those to you. They have their own place where that data is. This might then limit the page range that you have to run this process on. So if I know that pages 5 through 30 are all coming from the architect and they all look fantastic, all the same sheet size, it's awesome. But then pages 31 through 50 are from some other provider of that content. Their title block orientation is different, or the content you're trying to pull is different. You would limit your page range here to the right spot. So in this case, if 1 through 30 or whatever I want to have is from a certain provider, I would change this page range from all the sheets, all the pages, to a custom range and tell it, I want to run this from my area I chose from pages 1 through 30. And then run through this again on pages, say, 31 through 50. So you can get the right results, because you're going to look at these coordinates, where you chose when you pick that window, on whatever page range you choose here. So if that location varies the kind it's pulled from, you may want to run it multiple times. So I run through my process. It only takes a few seconds to go through this. But this routine of labeling all the pages, you'll see your mine's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It'll go through and then have the cover page and the first floor, east, northwest, whatever you want to have, it's labeled for it, pulled in and labeled for all of my sheets. Just the amount of time saved from anyone else trying to figure out what's on a given page is going to be just amazing. Now, bookmarks is a very similar approach. So I can grab bookmarks here. This is my next little panel icon down. I can choose create bookmarks. And it's a similar kind of approach. Both the bookmark creation and the page labeling use a routine called auto marking. They're in essence the same basic type of tool. So like they can kind of feed off of each other. So in my case here, if you have page labels done, I could just simply click OK and be done. Or if this is the one piece that you do leverage more times than not, maybe you have this laundry list of sheets. It's not 30, 40 pages, it's 400 pages, and using thumbnails is just not very convenient. You might run this same routine of the page region to grab the page number and the page title to make the bookmark list from. That might be where you stop because you don't leverage thumbnails. Just do the same routine I just showed before here. In my case, I already have my page labels done. I can just simply click OK. Now I have the entire list of bookmarks created right here. It's up to you as to what makes the most sense for how the team is going to navigate through the PDF. Thumbnails if you want that visual cue to all the sheets, or bookmarks if you want to have just that text list of all the pages that make up the PDF. Either way is fine. Now, a different means of making the bookmark. This is great when you got the labels done, or even trying to pull the data from the PDF yourself. You can come into here and just add your own bookmark. So I just have one here at the bottom. It'll just default to wherever you're at right now. My current PDF, my current page amount, it made a bookmark to it. So if you're on a certain sheet, you can just say add a bookmark, it'll make a bookmark to that sheet. It's one of those quick and easy kind of ways as you're working through the PDF, just say, yep, I should put a bookmark here, just make one. You can kind of do it on the fly as you go through. There's a lot of options down here as far as the before and after. So whatever you have selected, before just means add a new bookmark above that one. After means below. There's also a child becomes an indent under that sheet. So think of it like a word outline, just has that indented list to it. Another piece I want to get into then is hyperlink. Ways to go through and make links inside of the file to be easier to navigate through. So you can do it a couple of ways as far as how you add in the hyperlinks. And I think I mentioned before that this could be its own hour or two presentation on just hyperlinks. I want to touch on just a couple ways to do that here. You can just add in your own location. So if you pick somewhere on the sheet, take me to someplace else. So create your own regional style hyperlink. Let's just say, for example, there's a space here. If I click inside of that location, take me to someplace else. Do something with that. So the hyperlink icon is like a little green chain link icon that's here on my toolbar, or you can go to your tools menu. About 3/4 the way down is hyperlink. Either way. So when you click that, you have the option to go through and define a region. I'm just going to pick this space here. So now what I have is if I click anywhere inside of this blue box, whatever I've defined for the action, it'll do that action. So you can create whatever kind of connection that you want to make. So if I click here, go to a certain page, or if I click here, go to a whole different PDF. You choose what you want to have the action take on. So here's a list of options, a list of actions that you can do with that hyperlink. So if I want to go and just simply jump to a certain page, I'm on whatever page 9 right now, I want to go to say jump to page 1. If I click OK for this, helps actually choose the right pages. So jump to page 1. This is hard to see on screen, but that's my icon change, little hand, little pointer. This is now a hyperlink back to page 1. Whenever you make these hyperlinks, they're all recorded and you can go back and edit those. It's hard to see it here just because there's no highlight, there's no outline to it when I make these manually like this, but there is a links panel which will track that. So here's the one that I just made. This one that goes to my cover page. If I had to, maybe I wanted to resize it, I can select that hyperlink here. So yeah, it's a little aggressive for how big it is. It should be a bit smaller, maybe positioned differently. However, you have to adjust that. You can make your changes to it from here. Even going so far as to changing what it does. So I can right click on that and edit the action and say, well, yeah, don't go to page 1. I want to go to page something else. Go to page 5 instead. Whatever you have to have that to. Even going and just changing it so it goes not to a page, but maybe it goes to a certain location on a certain page. I want to go maybe just to a certain place. So I can create what that is. I'll call this, I don't know, detail X, because why not? And I'll say I want to get a rectangle. This could go to a whole different page. It could do, whatever you want to have this do. I'm just one of the same sheet. So mine's going to go right to this little upper portion up here. So if I were to select then on that link, I jump to that location. So if this was meant to be, here's a link to a detail. So he actually has some kind of a tag on there that ties saying detail for this is on page such and such, detail number X. You could manually create those saying, click here, go to that detail. So just prepping all of this that whoever has to then view your PDF can easily navigate through that. And that can be a tedious process to go through. If I want to have something to jump to this page, the A2 one for this east elevation, doing all that one by one by one could be, I think the nice way is taxing is a nice way of phrasing that. That's a lot of work to go through and do that. Now, a different means to do this is that we can go through and do what's called a batch link. I want to go through and create kind of this global search throughout the entire PDF, find a certain search term, and create links to all of those. So for just a quick example, I want to go and show you, like say on my first page. My sheet index has all the list of the sheet numbers and titles defined for me all right here. I want these to be linked. So if I click on this sheet number, take me to that sheet number. Or if you have a section or a detail tag, some elevation tag, take me to those sheets where that content is located. You can go through and do what's called a batch link. Now this does require having Bluebeam Review Extreme to create this hyperlinks. It does not require Extreme to use the links that are created. So if someone has access to do this process on it, fantastic. You can run this, make all the hyperlinks throughout the PDF for the entire plan set, give that to someone else who has Bluebeam Review Standard. All those links still work just fine. The routine for this, so how I want to have this go through and run this routine on is what defines the search term. So I got 3 options here. So what I'm looking for are these sheet numbers. Any place where I find a sheet number, if it's inside of a elevation tag or detail, some note, whatever it's located in, if that number is listed somewhere, give me a link back to the corresponding page. So how do I define that search term? We can do the region like I've done before with the page labeling. I already have the page labels done, so I can leverage that. Otherwise, if you don't have the page labeling done, choose the region and just go select around the page number that you're trying to find. Next part of this, if you haven't done this before, you'll probably have the sheet number and title because that matches your page label. I want to kind of trim that down so it's just the page number and not the number and title. To do that, you want to go into your settings. Then however you want to filter it down, I'm just saying filter from the start. So basically left to right as you're reading. And what is your first kind of stop point? What's your filter character? Since I put in a space dash space for my gap in between my first and second regions inside of that page labeling, I'm going to stop at my first space. So this becomes my search term kind of settings, the criteria that define it down to just the information I'm trying to query. Now I can generate that search term list. It'll look at all my page labels and find just the first portion of that. Now this just depends on how you have it set up. If you have the sheet title first and the number second, you might start from the end versus the beginning. It's up to you as to what makes the most sense. Now before you try to run this, go into your link options because this will work. You'll have links, it'll work fantastic. The problem you're going to have initially is that no one's going to be able to see it because there's no appearance properties to it. Like the one hyperlink I just made before that would link that portion of the upper portion of the building. I never knew a link was there because nothing went through and actually highlighted where it was. So go into your link options, make sure that the include appearance properties are turned on. This by default is turned off. So check this. Then this is up to you if you want to change the color, change the style of being used, change this to what makes the most sense for how you want to use it. It's hardly your call. But what you'll see is how this my light blue, my cyan color, and how the fill style will look. So if I go ahead and run this, it just takes a few seconds to go through this one. I don't have that many pages. But in a matter of 5 or 8 seconds here, whatever it might be, I've made a couple hundred hyperlinks to navigate through the PDF with. So any place I find a sheet number inside of the PDF, I now have a link to the corresponding page. So all these have links to it. Now, if you are missing some, like I don't have the 4.20, the 606, I don't have those pages. So I have nothing here to link to. So now I can go to that one. It takes me to that page. If I have links of sheets on this page, like this goes to 4.4, I can select that to take me to that page. And here's for a certain detail. Takes me to that page. Now this routine doesn't go down to the granular level of, oh, that's detail number 2. That's snapshot into that small region to it. It doesn't know detail 2 from detail 52. It knows that this number is for that page. Show me that page. But an easy way to go through and navigate through the plan set. Again, you need Extreme to make the linking. You do not have to have Extreme to leverage the linking. You can save this PDF, give it to someone else. I don't even care if they're not even on Bluebeam Review. The hyperlinks are part of the PDF. The hyperlinks will still work. And if you got questions, feel free to type them inside of here. But just with these few basic tools of trying to combine, extract pages to pair down the PDF to what you want, labeling all the pages, making the bookmarks so you can see and have the right content being tagged inside of there, and then linking these sheets together. Just these few minor things, it'll maintain a way for the team to navigate through that PDF much more efficiently to go through and do it. Now, other approach with the hyperlinking too is if you have a markup, I'll just go a really fast one here and say, yep, I got a markup, points to that. You can take any markup that you have and add an action to it. This is the hyperlink. So if you have a certain note saying, yeah, these are on detail such and such, you can link back to that from any markup that you've done. You don't have to add the hyperlink manually to a region. It can be embedded in the markup itself. So if I do this, if I add that action to a markup, it's the exact same dialog box as if you were to make the hyperlink on just a random region of the PDF. Same options to it. I can go to a certain page of the PDF, a certain place to look at, you got a snapshot view, even options to go to outside destinations, meaning non-PDF content. I can grab a URL of a website and just paste that inside of here. So if these are instructions for the manual to install a certain faucet, whatever it might be, I can hyperlink to that. Or open up another document. It could be a Word doc, Excel spreadsheet, doesn't matter. I can link to anything else to have this markup be tied to that. So I'm gonna go through and just, I don't know, have it jump to page 4. It shows just a little lightning bolt in the corner of it. So you can select that and it takes you to whatever the action is for that markup. So what happens to that if you flatten the markup? That lightning bolt goes away, but the entire markup is now a hyperlink. So it doesn't have to be a live, modifiable markup to be able to have that hyperlink stay alive and well and active. You can then flatten the PDF and share it, and the hyperlinks are still there. But now you got to have that the markup there to kind of be the placeholder of where the hyperlink goes to. So a big laundry list of questions here. I'll see if I can't get to a couple of these before we wrap up. Just want to be respectful of everyone's time. Yes, we are recording it. We'll get a link to this hopefully by the end of the week. And like I mentioned before, there'll be a recording of it with a link to it. And all the questions that you have here, I'll answer what I can now in the next couple of minutes. But even that will be a spreadsheet list of all the questions, and I'll have a typed out response to all those questions as well if I don't get to them verbally. So you have both. So one of the questions here about the untitled viewports, that's one that comes in often. So whenever you open up a PDF, I don't have one here to show as an example of that, but it comes up fairly commonly as coming from a CAD software that has its own viewport kind of approach to how it generates the views and the sheets, and that's set up within CAD. You make the PDF off of that. You open it in Bluebeam Review, a common prompt that comes up of, oh, multiple untitled or unnamed viewports. And the basic question there is, do you want to delete these, yes or no? More often than not, your response is going to be yes. If you're not sure, you can choose no. So what may happen there is if you have multiple viewports, that you'll see those show up inside of the viewports panel here, in the measurements panel rather. See these viewports down here? You'll see like unnamed or untitled. You get 2, 3, 4, 5 of those being listed out here for you. Typically what's going to end up happening with those is that they're across the entire page. So if I just make, for a quick example, if I make one here, you'll have one that looks kind of like this across the entire sheet. I'll call this untitled. I can't spell, but close enough. So you end up with something like that. You try to measure, you try to do anything inside of that, and the whole thing turns blue on you, and it just drives you crazy. In those cases, when that prompt comes up, you can say yes to delete those viewports. There's also a checkbox in that dialog of don't show me again. It should then just delete those right away as you open them. Now, if you haven't done that, if you're not sure as to whether you want to have them go or stay, leave it alone. You can say no to that prompt. Go to the pages. You'll see in the measurement panel this little trash can icon down here in the lower right. You can choose to clear them all out from either just the page you're on or the entire PDF. It's up to you. There might be some viable viewports that you want to take advantage of and not lose. You might want to go through a case-by-case basis, but if you know that they're all just going to make you crazy, you can dump them from the whole PDF, the entire document. Just choose the option to clear them all out. All the viewports will go away. So one of the questions here about struggling to add the slip sheeting. Slip sheeting is a whole separate conversation to have. That's something I would probably do an entire webinar on, just that portion to it, along with the hyperlinking as well. A lot deeper we can get into for this. But kind of a webinar go through that, probably a good idea to go through just the whole slip sheeting process. Another question about having the sheets be combined or individual. That's a great question to go through and really define how the team wants to use the files out in the field. This is just prepping the documents for the field, but how is it going to be used by them? That's one of those one PDF, multiple PDFs conversations that to have around there. Benefits to both. Having one PDF just means you got one file to interact with. There's just one file to manage. The problem with the one PDF is that it's basically a one person in at a time in most cases. Sessions gets around a lot of that stuff, but that can become its own problem, having just one file as well, just from a document management standpoint, from user access. Having multiple files, though, means you could break it down into, these 30 sheets are all now individual pages. I can be on page 5 and you could be on page 22, making your markups and changes to it without stepping on anyone else's toes. There's more files to manage, which can be one of the downsides to it, because you might have dozens or hundreds of sheets to look at. So it's going to be a matter of what works best for how the team in the field wants to use those files. So another good question here about the stapler, and I'm not sure if I know the answer to this one right now. I definitely will look into it and find out, but does combining the files in the stapler invalidate any signatures on the sheets? And my first thought is yes, because you are making a new PDF, which is not what was signed off on. So what was signed was, PDF A, and now you've got, PDFs A, B, and C combined to make a brand new PDF. That brand new PDF wasn't what was signed. So my first thought is that yes, it would have a problem with your signatures on it, but I've not gone through and tested that myself to know for sure, but I'm fairly confident that would mess up how it's been signed. I think I got through a good portion of the questions, maybe half or so of them. I know we're at our time. I want to be respectful of everyone's time today here. Appreciate everyone coming and taking time today to sit in on the presentation. So let me get back into this, wrap things up. Q&A, just talked about that. The next steps, if you got more questions, you want to dig deeper, feel free to reach out to us. There's actually one of the first slides of the video has my email on it too. So if you're welcome to reach out to me if you have questions for me. What's coming up is you got on the 16th is reasons why to scan to BIM. And the 30th, we're going to be at the IHEEP conference as well. Then on December 7th, I'm going through another presentation on the Bluebeam tool chest with the focus on infrastructure as far as the civil side of it as well. So you're welcome to attend that if you wanted to see more on the tool chest. Thank you everyone for your time. I'm probably gonna hang out for a little bit and just read through some of the questions. I might type in some responses. Otherwise, I'm done with my presentation for today. Thank you all. Have a great rest of your day.